Peace and blessings, soul family. I love you all. Hope everyone's doing well. We're about to close out the discussion on the Shiva Tattwas, which are the macrocosmos and the aspects of the divine. And today we're on Shiva. So I'll go into from Tantra Illuminated by Chris Harish Wallace. Tattva 1, the benevolent one, Shiva. In the context of non-dual Shiva Tantra, Shiva is not the name of a god. Rather, the word is understood to signify the peaceful, quiescent ground of all reality, the infinite silence of transcendent divinity, or, in the poet's phrase, the still point at the center of the turning world. While Shakti is extroversive, immanent, manifest, omniform, and dynamic, Shiva is introversive, transcendent, unmanifest, formless, and still. Shiva is the absolute void of pure consciousness. The word Shiva is traditionally interpreted as that in which all things lie, since the verbal root shi means to lie. Thus, Shiva is the ground of being, that which gives reality its coherence, that in which all things find their repose. His nature is beyond all qualities and is therefore difficult to express in words, but in the essence of the Tantras, Shiva is described as the coherence and unification of all the various Shaktis. Thus, he is called Shaktiman, the one who holds the powers, or rather, holds space for their unfolding. However, since Shiva is literally nothing without the power of consciousness, bliss, willing, knowing, acting, and so on, it is usually Shakti who is worshipped as the highest principle in non-dual Shiva Tantra. Shiva is that which grounds and coheres the various powers. He is the lord of the family, Kuleshwara. The center axis is the spinning wheel of powers. As the coherent force, Shiva hardly has an insignificant function, but as he is not an embodiment of potency himself, he's likely more to attract worship in a spiritual system that is focused primarily on the empowerment of its adherents. You may notice that the imagery of non-dual Shiva Tantra, we often see a dynamic image of the goddess and a static image of Shiva. Shiva lying down on Shavasana, with a goddess sitting or standing upon him. The previous paragraph defines Shiva primarily as spaciousness, the hosting space for the energy that is Shakti. This space or energy polarity is the one given in a Trika text called the Vijnana Bhairava Tantra, which is this that we'll be definitely going into here soon once we get some of these preliminaries broken down. The space energy polarity is one in a Trika text called Vijnana Bhairava, among other sources. The Vijnana Bhairava prefers to define Shiva as spaciousness and Shakti as flowing energy. We should note that in other contexts the roles are defined differently. For example, the influential recognition school, a subset of the Trika, defines Shiva Shakti as the two complementary aspects of one divine consciousness. Shiva is the light of manifestation, Prakasha, also known as the light of consciousness, Chit Prakasha, and Shakti is blissful self-reflective awareness, Vimarsha. This pairing is sometimes concisely abbreviated as Chidananda, awareness bliss. In this way of understanding Shiva Shakti, he is the illuminating power of consciousness that manifests and shines as all things, and she is the power by which the same consciousness folds back in on itself and becomes self-aware, and thus can enjoy itself. While new students of the Tantra often want a simple, cut-and-dried definition of the polarity of Shiva Shakti, the tradition does not offer us one. Indeed, as this paragraph has shown, we get different definitions within the very same school sometimes. These need not be seen as contradictory, however, for the ultimate reality of Shiva Shakti transcends all thought. The diverse explanations are just varying orientations or angles of approach to that one reality, serving different students in different contexts. In another schema, that of the radical Krama school, Shiva disappears entirely. For there, the two aspects of the one are represented as different facets of one goddess. The indescribable void of absolute potential, the formless ground of all reality, Shiva's usual role, is represented as the dark and emaciated, terrifyingly attractive goddess Kali, who devours all things and makes them one with herself and the infinite light that encompasses all things and beings with loving compassion and insight, is represented as white and full-bodied goddess Para, overflowing with boundless nectar. But as Abhinavagupta stresses, these apparent opposites, black and white, empty and full, are simply two forms of the one great goddess beyond all representation. The Krama school simply wishes to avoid the inevitably dualistic implications of the image of Shiva Shakti as two beings joined together. How to reconcile these different presentations? The answer is simple. They need no reconciliation, for they are each perfectly fitted to the system in which they occur. And the absolute reality beyond words can be represented by any of these schemas or by none. It is important to know that the term Shiva, or God, never loses importance in this tradition. Some might construe the more refined philosophies of non-dual Shiva Tantra as atheistic because they wholly repudiate the notion of God as a separate person, a guy in the sky, or indeed as anything separate from your essence nature as dynamic, free awareness. Yet it is significant that these very traditions continue to use the word God and its synonyms, such as Maheshwara, the Great Lord, or Parameshwara, the Supreme Divinity. It seems to me that they do not want to dispense with the love and devotion that is inspired in so many by this personalizing of the Absolute. They want a path of intimate relationship, even though ultimately we can relate with nothing but our own self. At the same time, remember that the tradition gives us a beautiful non-dual definition of the word God, one worth repeating. In actuality, is the unbound light of consciousness, reposing in its innate bliss, fully connected to its power of willing, knowing, and acting that we call God. It is in this context of the definition that we may understand such scriptural statements as nothing exists that is not God. But here we are anticipating the next section for beyond. Even Tattwa 1 is that which unfolds all the Tattwas from 1 to 36 within itself as the expression of its blissful self-awareness. So I'll say to add to this, where he talks about the dispensing of God and how that that it's being kept within the traditions, even though these are non-dual traditions. So there is no separation from our essence nature and the divine. So the beauty of it, the reason that you see it still bhakti still kept in the tradition, where it's that devotional relationship with the divine. If you see people that are completely throwing bhakti out and saying there's no use for it because we already are God and there is no separation and it's all non-duality, but they've thrown out the bhakti, you can tell that they have came across more neo non-duality, basically just some of these newer, more new age concepts of using these very specific understandings in a watered down way, to where it's just, you're God, there's nothing to do, there's no reason to do any spiritual practice because you're already perfect, you're already one with God, so there's no reason to make any attempts to connect with God. So that's how you can tell if somebody has ran into non-duality at too early an age or too early in their path. All right, I love you guys, and I will come back to you in just a little bit with the final little chapter of this. Peace and blessings.